could be here for our first program of 2022. I'm going to just make some brief announcements and then we're going to get right into the program. So the first thing I wanted to let you know is that obviously we're still not ready to go back to in-person programs. We're evaluating that every month and hopefully we'll get back to it soon. I know it's really frustrating for everybody to not be able to mingle and chat and talk about all of your nature adventures. And, you know, we really miss that too. So just hang in there and we'll do it as soon as we can. But however, we are back to a full schedule of field trips for the year. And we have a new online registration system that makes it really easy for you to add yourself to a trip or to the waiting list for that trip if it's full. The upcoming trips that we have right now are on Saturday, February 5th is a winter gulls and ducks trip with Tom Kemp. And then Saturday, February 19th is urban birding at Woodlawn Cemetery with Sherry Plessner. And Jessica asked me to tell you that if you would like to lead a field trip, if you think you have a certain thing that you want to have a trip and you want to lead it, just send her an email at tnafieldtrips@gmail.com. We'll put that in the chat during the program too. Also, because of who our speaker is tonight, I think we might have more students than usual in our audience. So I wanted to mention that TNA has two funds that we use to disperse scholarships to students in the environmental sciences. One of them is for research and the other is sort of a general academic scholarship. So the application forms for those are on our website. So if you're a student or if you know somebody who might be interested, please share that with them, because we would love to give those scholarships out. Let's see what else. I'm going to turn this over to our field trip chair, who's Jessica Susser-McEwen. She's standing in for Jim Witter tonight. She's going to do the introduction of our speaker. And before I turn it over to her, I just wanted to mention that we ask that you keep your video turned off and just use the chat window to type questions, and Todd will answer those at the end. So thank you so much for being here. And here's Jessica.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Susser-McEwen, and I'm the field trip chair of Toledo National Association. I'm really excited tonight to introduce today's speaker. He is, as many of you probably know, Todd Crail, PhD. He is a distinguished lecturer in the Department of Environmental Sciences at the University of Toledo. He's an ecologist and naturalist covering broad topics from non-game fish and mussels to landscape management and orchid reintroduction. His focus is fostering undergraduate engagement through field experiences both on campus and with the local conservation community to solve local environmental issue. He works to employ inquiry and project-based learning through informal classroom environments to maximize students' experience. So without further ado, here is Todd.
Introduction, and I'd like to talk to you all a little about what we've been doing here at the University of Toledo in our GUTS program. Okay, so the title is Right Plants, Right Place, Right People, and we're going to talk about some restoration and resiliency that we've been building here at the university. And thank you for this great crowd too. It's pretty cool to see so many people show up and so many new names. That's I like that even better. So the question is, when we're thinking about concept and landscape design, we're thinking about the right plant in the right place. And a question that I began working on a couple decades ago was whether native plants were the right plants. I liked them at my place. Are they right for other people? And it's been a long path. I think we've really turned the corner on this recently. I think a lot of people in the audience are pro these processes. It's a different aesthetic. It's not, I kind of like to think about it in terms of Western individualism. That's the way our gardens were. I am a plant, and I am a plant, and I am a plant. And native gardening concept's a little more fluid and not so discrete. So the question is, can we get a different aesthetic to gain greater functionality? Okay, and I use the term restore. What we're talking about here isn't really restore, it's rehabilitation. And that's another very important point to make, is that restore sounds, it's heroic and so forth, and rehabilitate is more nurturing. And that's really what we're doing here. These are not historic ecosystems by any means. When we're doing some of the work in the Oak Openings region, we're doing restoration. But this is a different kind of work because we're starting off with dirt. It's not even a soil in a lot of cases. So the question is, can we rehabilitate? What are we putting back? What's the function that we're putting back? Well, native plants will sequester carbon, and you can do that to a certain amount with traditional landscaping, but not quite like these plants do. By having these big, deep root systems, they are pulling carbon into the ground. They are pulling water into the ground. The water is pulling nutrients into the ground. And they're also feeding native wildlife and things that are important to us, like pollinators. All right. They're lower maintenance. They're not no maintenance. That is one of the big mistakes people make, is that they say, oh, it's no, there's work to be done. But at the point where you're lowering the interaction, it's time, and time is money, because money is energy. And so the question was, could we convince the university this was a good idea for our place? Okay, so what is our place? We're at University of Toledo. This is a 300-acre urban campus built mostly within the stream terrace of the Ottawa River. All right, we told the river where to be, and then we get upset about rivers when they misbehave, right? Shame on you, river, for not listening to what I told you to do. So we've got this very hardscaped area within this river terrace. The greenery that you see is mowed turf, and it's a predominant ground cover, aside for anything that's a hard surface. Okay, and I'm not a huge fan of lots of grass, but I do like grass. Okay, turf grass is the right plant for a space where you need to walk or build a sense of approach. So you can see, we've got a sports field it's the right plant in the right place. We need a plant to be run on that can tolerate that type of abuse, and it's fine. Centennial Mall is another place where we see that sense of approach. My opinion, if I were king for a day, would be to plant each of those little squares in their own little prairies, but I can totally get behind other people not wanting that. And that's a very important concept that we'll come back to in a bit. The fact remains, though, the lake is green. And why is the lake green? Because the water runs off of the landscape and it carries everything with it. And nearly every drop of rain that falls on the campus goes directly into the river, all right? And that even includes on the grass. There are storm heads everywhere in the grass of the campus because we want water. I just want it out of there. I don't want to think about it. I just want it to go away. And when we do that, there's going to be a bottleneck somewhere, all right? And typically that's a flood, okay? So Finley's whole problem is that all that water, we told it what to do, get out of here as fast as you can. And then it comes up against the I-75 bridge and floods out Finley, or all of it rushes on down to western basin of Lake Erie, and with everything that it's carrying with it, you got a bottleneck. That's where it stops, it slows, it interacts with the sunlight, and we have our algal bloom issues. Okay, so for an institution of higher learning, I'd like to think we could be a little more enlightened about this. As well, there's dwindling resources for public education. This has been a process going on for a bit. And in order to support other, what are perceived more critical services, maintenance is one of the things that gets cut. We've got 9 people maintaining this 300 acres. Okay, so I know they've got an issue there because I talked to the facilities people, and I know they're doing a lot of mowing. And they're wondering, like, how are we supposed to do this? And one of the things that I have learned is that you want to be effective. You don't just show up with a problem, you show up with a solution. And that's another key thing that we're going to discuss here. So rattlesnake master. I mean, how do you go wrong with this plant? The bugs love it. It's cool looking, and it's potentially threatened in Ohio. It's threatened in Michigan, and it stands up very straight. It's not going to flop over and do all the things. And so, you know, that might be indicative of an interesting solution to all this turf grass that we're supposed to be mowing. But how do you get that? I mean, I saw a few people from different universities are here wondering, I'm sure, how to convince their schools, and I'll walk you through that whole process, or at work, or your spouse, or, you know, there's lots of different scales of influence where what I'm going to talk about is important to follow. Your neighbors, for example. All right, so are these the right plants? Okay, I don't want to come in the morning and see one of the facilities guys mowing down my flowers, right? That would be bad. At the same time, in the bottom picture, this is a native planting. You've got some common milkweed and some Joe Pye weed and some obedient plant, or disobedient plant, as I like to call it. This is a big silky dogwood. It's leaning out over the sidewalk. It's a high traffic area. It looks terrible. All right, I'm not gonna pull any punches there. All right, it looks bad. So how do we end up avoiding these kinds of issues? All right, how do you convince somebody if this is all that they've seen? And this is the language we use. I would like to clean up the installations that have been left for facilities to manage. That's what happened in a lot of cases. Someone's like, I'm going to put in a rain garden. I'm going to save the monarch butterfly. And then they don't do anything with it after that, because they're just weeds. They just fill in, right? And that's not the case. Okay. So you're starting to open people up. I want to create this. I love this. I want to create something that looks acceptable. I said this to the vice president of facilities. He said, it's just going to look acceptable. I said, yeah. He says, not good. I'm like, good, bad. I don't want to get involved in that. That's an opinion. Let's talk about where we're building communication and we come up with something we agree is okay. Let's go there. Okay, meet in the middle somehow. There's 1,300 species of plants that are native to Lucas County. My hope is that we can agree on 75 to 100. It's as simple as that. Okay, so this is the way I walked into this. And there's a little bit more backstory to it, but that's one way to think about this. All right, so we have this service learning thing. And man, it's amazing what you can get a young person to do for extra credit. It's insane. You're going to see how much they've done here in a second. All right, they've been working at these off-campus locations. They get course credit for extra credit to do something in their community. A lot of the people participating, most of the people participating are from our service course. They're not even environmental majors. They're coming from the other majors. And that's how I interpret this to them. I'm like, you know, we got plenty of scientists. We need interpreters now. You guys are the ones. We need people in business and social work and early childhood education and criminal justice. We need the artists, the musicians, the writers. That's who we need. So the idea was to get them outside working on this stuff. And with them, we had designed and planted and maintained 2 roundabouts for Lucas County engineers. That's out on Dorr Street. And I'll come back to that in a second. These guys hand cleared 25 acres of invasive shrubs at Irwin Prairie, which just blows my mind. Okay. 2 important things right there. One was we messed up at Irwin Prairie. We started cutting down invasive shrubs. We didn't talk to anybody. We're a little bit self-righteous about it. And we ticked some people off. We didn't build community around that project. And believe it or not, there were a lot of people upset that we were cutting down invasive shrubs. Okay, and that included a lot of members in TNA. They had been birding there. We ruined their Connecticut warbler spot, and we didn't talk to anyone. And that was not sustainable. I learned a lot from that. The second part is the roundabouts. You don't ever know who's looking at anything you're doing. And it just so happened that the manager for main campus was retiring, and I've been working with his replacement since, and he drove by there every day. He goes, "You don't have to do anything out there." I said, "Well, it's not totally true, but yeah, we spent 4 person hours out there last year." He's like, "Yeah, you don't have to do anything out there." I said, "Yeah, does it look okay?" He's like, "Oh, actually, I think it looks great." He's like, "It surprised me because when it first went in, I was like, oh, that's going to be dumb." And it really grew on him. All right. That's Doran Centennial. Doran King, we get screamed at, cussed at. Somebody came in, they threw a bunch of perennial rye seed into it. It's wrecked. I can't do anything about it. But you know, that was the way the engineers wanted to handle that one. Okay, so there's lots of ways to get about this, and I'm going to talk to you. Second part of this is to talk about how to kind of avoid these kinds of things. But the big thing here going forward is the students are like, "Why aren't we doing this on campus?" And I said, "Well, you know, that's a really good question." So part of how all this came to be is that the students had set up what they call the Green Fund. And we had made some changes in how the Green Fund was administrated through one of our courses. And we changed it to opt out instead of opt in. So it was an optional fee before, nobody paid for it. We made it so you don't have to pay it, but you have to click a button. And boy, by just putting that roadblock in there for $5, it changed a lot. They're generating, $60,000 every semester, and it generates a ton of money. It's Student Green Fund is a student-run committee, and only students can access that fund. So they make proposals to the Student Green Fund, and they decide if they want to fund it or not. And students in our department wrote a proposal to fund one student employee to initiate inventory and expansion of native plantings on campus. And they said, "Yeah, that's a great idea." And so we did. And that germinated Guts, bringing UToledo through service. And students like to say it takes guts to show up and solve things. So we're finding the right people now. We got the right plants, we got the right people, we got the right place. And Guts is it's also a student-directed effort. And pre-COVID, this was always working marvelously, and we're going to start again this semester. Just kind of like the field trips reinitiating, we're going to be able to do this kind of stuff again. It's been a rough 2 years in between, but the Student Green Fund has helped mitigate some of those issues. But again, students are going to be able to come out and connect with their fees, basically. They're going to be able to work at each step of the process so they understand what the process is, from cleaning and collecting, growing, and maintaining those different installations. And then this work then complements our curriculum on harmful algal blooms, land use, and climate change, because each of these things are in 3 hours basically addressing any of those big problems that students feel helpless against. And it kind of helps to change some of the narrative in what we're doing and how we're responding to these global issues. So we have space in the greenhouse in the Plant Science Center, and we have storage in DES facilities. There's support. I do the technical support. John Bossenbrook does the administration, and Jeff Godostik is the facilities manager for main campus. But what makes the program successful when it's working, and it's working well, is that the way it's designed decentralizes power from me and puts it into the hands of the students. And Zoomers or Gen Z or whatever they're calling them in the media today, young folks, 18 to 20 something year olds that I'm working with, they're kind of mad. They're really mad, actually. And I think what brings that anger out is that in a lot of ways they were held back from learning how to start. Okay, they were kind of coddled into their educations, and that it's doesn't work. And there's a lot, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, a lot. Okay, so bear with the stereotypes there. But they do struggle with starting. They're not real sure. Well, you know, it takes almost a whole summer for them to believe me that, no, I really want you to tell me what you're doing. What do you want to do? And part of that is I may disagree with you. And I'm not saying you can't. And a lot of times I let it go. All right, go ahead, make a mistake, because that's how you're going to learn. So it works. It works. Before COVID hit, these folks planted 12,000 plugs across campus. They had another 4,000 that had overwintered. We started building inventory. The blue dots are the garden installations. The yellow stars, or blue stars, whatever. Yellow stars are more conversion of turf into prairie or woodland. And they've built quite an inventory of sites to take a look at. It's pretty awesome. And I think this year we're at about 9,000 plugs that they've got set up for some projects that we're doing in the spring. So look at some of the installations that we've done. This was one of the first. This was a colleague had set up a rain garden here, and with their engineered media, and I can't stand that. It's like, just dig a hole and put plants in it. They had brought in narrow-leaf cattail. The thing was fenced off by a 7-foot tall hedge of barberry, and we began that in 2017 and dug everything out. You'll see some better progress photos later. And we expanded this installation to cut down on some of the maintenance. We were making people mow around it kind of weird. And so we expanded that. And one of the things I'm really playing with now is using sedges as a green mulch and having the flowers come up out of the sedges. So we're trying that concept along there. The Bominati Prairie was mowed turf grass. We set this up as an experiment. We had 2 sections to test different installations. The west plot was planted in spring 2017. The east plot was installed in fall 2017. And then we burned it to the ground. That was the fall plot. The picture you saw of the guy mowing, I asked him to do that. And there were a number of reasons for that. And most of them were because I wanted to show people that I wouldn't hesitate to mow it and burn it to the ground and start all over if it wasn't working. And that's what we did. And they're like, wow, he really will do that. Yeah, I really will do that. You know, it wasn't working all the best. We could have pulled it through, but we didn't. It was more important to demonstrate that we would stop what we were doing and get it functioning the way that we wanted it to. So then we reinstalled it in spring 2019, and there's 2 heights in there right now. I'm hoping this year it evens out quite a bit more. Carlson Library asked us, then they saw the Bominati Prairie, they're like, oh, we want that. So okay, and that was the first time that we had received outside funds beyond the Green Fund to do an installation. And that was done in 2019. And that was in collaboration with Carlson and the Honors College. We ran a course for our advanced majors and for honor students called Know Your Place. And that just cracks me up every time I say it. But yeah, we got them knowing their place. Their place was to act. And there had a lot of things that they didn't realize were pretty cool around them that they could demonstrate to other people. As a consequence of that and the success of that, we've added a second plot to the north end, and that's going to be more of a woodland community installation there. This was the big one because at this point, this was that big nasty hanging over the sidewalk garden, high traffic right next to the glass bowl. everybody was central part of campus. Everybody's walking by this thing that they called native plants. Oh, no thanks. It was dominated by Jerusalem artichoke. Yeah, Joe Pye had gone nuts. And I said, let's just throw the whole thing out. That's what we have to do. It's been there. A lot of people have talked their way through this process, but it's time. And I had a class who, it was a land and water class. It was an intro to the environment, do another proposal, and Student Green Fund paid for all that rock. Facilities donated the operator time. I mean, all of a sudden I've got bulldozers, backhoes, front end loaders, skid steers. I'm like, let's do something big. So we did. And it'll be planted this spring. We've got all those plants sitting in inventory. We're going to build a Barron's garden up in the front here with a pathway through it down to the sign. And then we'll take Irwin Prairie as our inspiration in the central part in the wet area. And we also excavated a lot of material out of it. Again, this amended material, it was hyper rich in nutrients. We didn't want that. We wanted more storage. And so it's been a little bit of a process, but it's a classroom. You know, people are like, is it a pond? But I'm like, no, it's a classroom. And they're like, oh my gosh, those are seats. Yeah, those are seats. We're going to talk about some things there. And there's lots of our courses that we can use that space. All right, so how do you succeed at this? How do you get to this point where they're like, sure, yeah, we'll take our 2 most expensive employees and have them hang out with you all Friday with big machinery to do things? That's when you know you did something. All right, and I like to borrow from the wild ones. Brett Rappaport came up with this acronym years ago, and it's BRASH. And this is the way you want to go into any kind of situation, okay? You want borders. You need to know, fences make good neighbors, okay? Everybody knows where they start and where they stop. You need to recognize the rights of others, and that can be a right to an opinion, okay? You need to advertise. You need to tell other people what it is you're doing, especially when it's so fundamentally different from most things that they've seen. Start small, okay? And I'll show you a better way to think about this. You're not going to be at a university in a major throughway right away. It takes time. It takes time. And you need to humanize, all right? You need to bring the person into the garden. It's tall in most cases in these types of installations, but they're not the ones, and most people aren't the ones who see the 70 goldfinches fly off in the winter. They just saw birds, right? They don't, and most people aren't here in the summer. So we've got to find ways to bring people into these gardens when they're in their peak. So borders, all right? Best is to maintain strong borders. I love real hard borders. This is where concrete and grass are amazing. All right, I'm really excited. I love these walls of little blue stem. Build a whole hedge of little blue stem in front of anything. I think you can get as crazy as you want behind it. All right, and this is what we told them we were going to do, and it made sense to them. I'm like, so you've got that built environment, you've got that homogeneous maintained environment. You've got a homogeneous wild environment, and then it can just be as heterogeneous as you want. And if stuff's hanging over, who cares? Chop it off, all right? They're into it. These plants are into it. They co-evolved with bison. They don't care. It's not your kid. Cut it off. Make a bouquet. Every summer, I got to retrain the students. And I know things are hitting when I walk into the supply room and there's 15 different vessels holding flowers all over the inside of the room. Got to recognize the right of others, all right? People have a certain aesthetic that they associate with productivity, and that is our culture. Maybe the culture is going to change. I don't know, but you need to be aware of that. And so I get these questions. What if in 15 years, I want to turn that prairie into a building or parking lot? Okay, this is the attachment to a tree. right? How much has University of Michigan paid to move 2 trees over the last couple of years? A lot, okay? Or just remove one whole altogether. I don't know if you all seen these stories. My answer to that was we had a prairie for 15 years, right? I'm going to take that opportunity and I'm going to expand out from it. I'm not going to just put that one prairie there and get real attached to it being there. It's a more mobile landscape. That's what prairie is. That's why I love these plants for doing this type of rehabilitation. Okay, it takes forever to grow a forest. And then you're upset when it is changed. Prairie is much more adaptive as a land cover, and you didn't have turf grass for 15 years. You really got to make it a community effort. You've got to listen, hear other concerns. And what I found best is to kind of try to get the most vocal involved in some way. Put them in charge. Okay, you know, it's easy to sit on the sidelines and take pot shots and criticize and do all these things. If you make them in charge, well, it makes it a little more difficult to interrupt things. And it's just better. It's just being kind, as I tell my daughter. Advertise. Oh, there's too many ways to advertise these days. A lot of them are inexpensive. How do you get your word out? You know, it's a shot in the dark. Which one do you choose? I think signage is essential, particularly when you're doing the site prep, because, you know, we went in and sprayed with Roundup, and I'm going to continue to spray with Roundup. And that's how we were making a short-term sacrifice to have a long-term benefit. That's how we do it. We have been messing with some different other herbicides. We have a peppermint peppermint oil that we use. All right. But people need to know all this stuff. All right. And this is where we haven't done the best job. Part of that's been Marcom at UT is just a monolith and whatever. But it takes time. You're going to have 3 seasons to grow. You should have some signage. We've been fortunate because we are a community that UT News will run stories. They love our stories. The department, Facebook, or the college folks are telling everybody about what we're doing. We're telling everybody about what we're doing. We're doing a lot of that through social media, and that can be good, but you got to be consistent. And you know, it feels like you're investing a lot for not much of a return. But if we can't get signs together, that's probably the best that we have been able to do. Start small. This is where everybody gets caught. You're looking at all these great pictures of big flowers, and you're not thinking about the fact that I had a 20-year head start. I had the roundabouts. I had Irwin Prairie. People have seen me work long-term with a project, and it's believable when I say, yes, I'm going to support that thing. Okay. But it all starts at home. This all started with a little garden in my front yard, and I started messing with it. Okay. Yeah, you're not likely to get a prairie put in a highly trafficked mode landscape. Start with something smaller. So what I like to say is be like Dr. Bornak, who is a lecturer of astronomy. She's the science wacky aunt to my crazy uncle for our big service courses. A lot of people pass through this university. They see the two of us, and she is here. You can see her little patch, right? And this is her seed project. So she's germinating out these different species, and she's incorporating some of them into these beds that existed. And she's taking things out. She's got stuff in the front, but she's trying, you know, everything's stardust. She's trying to figure out how these things can work into her astronomy curriculum. Right. So think beyond, you know, it doesn't take much area to demonstrate what you're trying to do. And then you go to the next scale, and then you go to the next scale and the next scale. My next scale is terrifying because it's in acres. You know, and you talking with Tim Sheeter from Metroparks. I mean, I just hats off to him for Howard Marsh. That's terrifying. I mean, what if it goes wrong? You know, we tell ourselves the same things, that there are different scales of influence that we act at. And then humanize. Okay. I love telling them this. You can't mess it up. It literally co-evolved with bison. They're like, oh, well, then I'll just do that then. Gardens are litter traps, right? Everyone's like, oh, there's all this trash in our garden. Well, pick it up. It didn't go into the river, did it? And who knows, you might find some money. And now I routinely see students searching around some of these gardens looking for money. Shamelessly used children. They'll bring everybody right in, all right? With permission, of course. I have permission to show these children. But, you know, it really connects people's brains and their hearts and everything together. And that's that rehabilitation. It's not just, it makes that connection that, oh, this is a plan for the future and not just something pretty that Todd threw up today, you know. Do crazy things like enduring prickly pear glow kids in your fingers all the time. I've got a big sandbox out in front of the building now that I put prickly pear in, and it's amazing. It's impressive. I mean, they're standing up almost a foot, and they go into flowers, just yellow flowers. People can't believe cactus is native to Ohio and it's threatened, and so on and so forth. So I gotta pick some of the weeds out while it's developing. So what? So what? It really gets people buying in. And be accessible. Don't be the expert. You don't want to be the expert. The age of experts needs to go. All right. It really, what was an expert? Somebody had the privilege to sit around and think about something for a while. That doesn't mean they have the best idea. The best answer to a question is a question. What do you think? You know, how should I do? I don't know. What do you think? And with, you know, for my students, they have the threat that I might disagree with them. And they can't just fall over and melt. If I'm the worst thing that they come up against, boy, they're doing all right, I hope. You know, what do you think? Did you consider this? Did you consider that? That's the best way to go into these types of projects, because people are going to have questions. You want them asking questions. You don't want them to just roll over and just let you do what you want. You want them engaged and asking why, and help them to see why for themselves. Because this is what you end up creating. This is resiliency. These young people, you know, once they get started, you're not stopping them. All these people are putting plants in mom and dad. They've convinced mom and dad, I need to have this in the yard, or they're planning the next installation. They're doing all kinds of things. And they'll be homeowners at some point, and they'll do it for themselves. So this is what we want. This is what we want. So what's up next? The big thing, so I think we've got enough gardens now, because it becomes a maintenance. It's not no maintenance, right? You still got to keep those borders. But what I want to move towards, and what facilities already did, I walked onto campus one day and saw a bunch of no-mow, and where they mowed borders, but they just let the rest go. And I was like, and everyone's like, I didn't have anything to do with this. I call over to Jeff. I'm like, wait, what are you doing? He's like, oh, we're going to do it, man. I was, okay. Can we turn those into prairies at some point? Oh yeah, man. We'll figure it out. So we've got acreage in no-mow to save resources, because anytime you manage something, you're spending energy. Okay, so the blue areas are areas that are not getting mowed. The gold areas are more natural landscapes that are in need of management. They've got invasives, or for example, they call this the toilet bowl down here behind McComas and Parks Tower, because all the trash gets trapped down there. I'm like, well, let's open up the canopy a bit here and get some wet woodland stuff in here. And better yet, let's start diverting some of our water that we're just shooting into the river into this area to build the hydrology of that spot again. That's by the end of my career. Okay, that's the time scales that we're talking about here. But this is what I want to get these students in. We want to start softening those lines between what's natural and what's human use, all right? Because everything is integrated, everything's connected. It's a law. And start developing management plans and get those no-mows converted over into prairie. so that we can get our 15, 20, 30, 40 years out of these things. So where does the rubber hit the road? All right, and this is a great anecdote. So this was where we were asking the natural world to do way too much. We used some engineering to try to figure this out. This is back behind Savage Hall, and is literally drinking from the proverbial fire hose. It's all coming downhill. It used to just go into a storm drain. It would come down to the storm drain at the far right end of this and just splash out. It was coming down so fast. And they were fixing a bridge nearby this. So you can see the breaks in the curb to catch the water, get it in there, and these big roots to hold soil together and absorb, and so on and so forth. And just uphill from this, someone blew a hydraulic line and spilled 300, 400 gallons of hydraulic fluid, and it just flew everywhere. And it flew right into the garden. And everybody was like, oh man, Todd's going to be so mad. And so they're like, so we had a problem today. And I was like, oh, good. It did its job. And they're like, what? You're not mad? No, it didn't go into the river. That's the whole point here. We don't want these things to go into the river. Plants are temporary. We can replace all these plants. These plants are easy to grow. Are you kidding me? And they didn't know that I was ready to tear the thing out and replant it anyway. So it was pretty cool because we were going to do it for free, and then we got paid to do it. We had people, the soil was donated from Olander, from their path. They went and got it for us. We already had the plants ready to go, planted it in. Nothing ran out into the river. And no one had to figure out how the subcontractor to the general contractor to the University of Toledo was going to pay for damages if there had been a spill. So that got everyone's attention. Now, it's been a few years and we all forgot, but we can go back and reference that, and we can bring that back up. And I think that's really what we want here. We're trying to soften those edges and blur what is natural and what is human, anthropogenic. So here's another view of the Edwards Memorial Garden. And here it is this fall. We couldn't plant it this fall because it wouldn't quit frickin' raining. But now it's storing water, and that water will not go out that drain when we put plants in, no matter how heavy it rains. It'll capture every last bit of that water and store it into the ground. Here's our 7-foot tall hedge of barberry. This is, we were so eager to tear out the cattails that we didn't even document it. It's a terrible thing. But when students come back in August, this is what it looks like. And that's on purpose. They drive up that road and you see it right ahead. Here's the Bowmanati Prairie. Before we did anything, they covered over the concrete pad with mulch and then mowed the grass around it. And this was last summer. And this is not completely altruistic. This is the view out my window. I get some benefit out of all this, right? So it really becomes about finding the right people, and you find the right place, and you plant the right plants for the right time. This is important, man. I'm going to use columbine and geranium everywhere because it actually flowers while students are there, and people start to understand. It's been amazing to see who's come out of the woodwork in the campus community and just so into this. One person, she's the director of student career services, and she's been photographing these plants. We didn't even know anything about it. She was photographing and building art with the photographs. And so that was one of the really cool things that we've run into. She's down South Toledo, and she's ready to convert her border garden that's in lots of oaks and shagbark hickory into spring ephemerals next year. So that's what I got. thank you for your time, and hope you enjoy that. So I think we're gonna ask questions.
Yes, so thank you so much, Todd, for your talk. We did have a couple of questions come up in the chat. The first one is, where'd it go? Oh, Angela wants to know is if there is a place that she can get all 1,300, a list of all 1,300 plants.
No. I don't know. Howman might be able to answer that better because he handled that for City of Toledo. And council might actually have it in the revised code. Now I'm thinking about it. Tim Walters would have produced it. And who asked about it? But Howman would be a person to talk to because Hal handled that with wildlife.
How do you spell that?
Halmann.
Okay. I hope that answered your question, Angela. Next, Amy N wants to know who does the garden designs.
Students-ish. So a lot of them, we talk about what we want out of the place. So for example, with the class, and some of it didn't work out the way that we really wanted it to. Okay, and so we'll spend time this summer revitalizing the installation. We're not doing formal plans like in CAD where you have a tree and this species here and this species there and this. It kind of comes together. What's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. It just happens. They move around too, and that's part of what we want. So not really putting a lot into the design. We talk about line and approach, and then we just kind of go for it. Yeah, next question.
Sorry about that. I muted for a second and I unmute myself again.
Okay.
Okay, our next question is from Amy F. And she wants to know, in addition to the names of the native plants, can you please specify how to secure seeds or plugs?
Yeah. So a side benefit from this is I've just trained 10 or 15 young people to do this. We have an enormous amount of capacity for a market and zero capacity to fill it. And if the university ever really ticks me off, I'm marching out of here and starting my own nursery. But securing this stuff is tough. How do you get, if you want to, all of our stuff is local genotype, but we have enough right now to supply what we need. Sometimes we end up with extra that we send out to specific projects as seed mixes. But yeah, it's difficult to get. Wild type up in Lansing is probably the best big resource. So that's kind of the regional one. Popping Up Natives, the Green Ribbon Initiative plant sale. I wish there was more capacity. Chris Link has been starting to work on some of this stuff. Hopefully his business will take off. I don't have a good answer for that. And that's why I'm always like, I know it's coming. I know it's coming.
I will put in, I struggle with this as well as a gardener in the region. And I do find that Wild Ones of the local Oak Openings chapter does usually keep a pretty decent list of whoever the current suppliers are. So
Popping Up Natives is a good one.
And Popping Up Natives.
Wood County Parks does a plant sale.
Yes. Let's see. And when I put that in, I lost my spot. Someone asked, and I lost who it was, if you have any garden plants that you can share.
I have a list of 25 species no yard should be without. They're adaptable to clay or sand. They're good looking. And unfortunately, I don't have quick access to it. Again, wild ones is probably a good thing to get involved in.
And that was Kim Hope. So, okay, Linda.
Kim, if you can contact me, Todd Crail at UToledo, I can send that to you. Or I can send it to Jess and she could send it out to everybody. I don't know if there's a good way to do that. I just don't have it. I don't have it accessible right here.
We can, if you send it to me, I can make sure that gets posted on our Facebook page.
Okay.
And I'll ask around and see if we have an email list of everyone who is here that we can send it out to.
Okay, awesome.
And then, Linda wants to know, what is DES?
Department of Environmental Sciences. Sorry about that.
See, Ken lives near UT and he loves seeing the gardens. Trying to see if there's any more questions here. Amy M, which you just answered, asked if you could mention some highly successful go-to plants that could be used in residential areas. I guess maybe give 3 examples.
Yeah, so if you've got sun, you can't go wrong with butterfly milkweed, as long as it stays dry enough. That's the trick with it. What else would I love rattlesnake master. It's such an awesome plant. The bugs love it. It stands upright. It needs full sun. Blazing stars. You can't go wrong with blazing stars. But again, full sun. If you've got more shade, geranium and columbine are fantastic. They flower in unison. If you've got a lot of shade, you go into the summer. It's too dark for a lot of things. Fall, there's a lot of goldenrods that aren't aggressive, but obtaining the seed source is a little more difficult for the ones that aren't hyper aggressive.
Okay, thanks, Todd. Eric Britton wants to know, he said, nice presentation. Can you comment on whether any other installations with lots of land in Toledo have become interested in this kind of program, such as City Parks, ProMedica, or the Well Tower?
Yeah, so Toledo Zoo, Wild Toledo is really kind of leading that charge. And I saw where they're doing a new installation at a TPS property. We haven't really shown this off yet. I mean, COVID, oh man, I would just not forget, what was it? It was a seed swap right before everybody had to go home. And I was watching all the urban gardeners interacting with the native plant people, and that exchange was happening. And I could see it from the top down. And then 2 weeks later, we all were stuck at home. And it broke a piece of me because I was like, we are so close to just going pop. And really good exchanges of information across new audiences. Because I've been involved in the urban ag stuff as well. So yeah, I think it's time to go out and talk to people about it. OI did a big installation. Zoo did a big installation for them over there. I mean, the zoo's really doing a good job of getting that information out.
And actually that leads really well into Rosie Dream's question. I'm really sorry if I'm butchering your names, everyone. But she asked, could there be an effort perhaps by students or your department to educate corporations in the Toledo area about the desirability of not using turf exclusively for landscaping? There are acreage opportunities coming up with the new Peloton site and the new First Solar site.
Yeah, it'd be great. You know, Owens Corning did this years ago, and I think it was too soon. maybe it's time to reinitiate that kind of stuff. But I mean, it's, you know, I'm spending a lot of hours volunteering to keep these guys running. This is why I'm out talking now, is to get champions out in the community to do the follow-up with the email, to do the contacts. If anyone's interested or knows people of influence, maybe that's your part in this, is just maintaining the communication and organizing. And then you come out and I do my Farmer Todd song and dance for everybody and get everybody excited about it. What I don't have time to do is follow up, because my students are my focus and they need a lot of things at a lot of different times. And so, yeah, you want to be a champion in the community. I'm all for it. Another thing I think I'd like to do is, I was talking about this with Marilyn, was called Grow Up, and we all come together for a kind of seminar thing, and we got big piles of trays, and people walk off with species, and they're the ones who are growing that species in their yard and taking care of the watering and all that. And then we come back together, and then we can move plugs into different arrangements, and people take that home. So yeah, I want to get this stupid pandemic over. I am so done. And then we can be social again safely and do some of these things.
Yeah, smiling so don't cry. Smiling so don't cry. Anyways, I think we have time for maybe one or two more questions. Elliot, if you could answer this quickly, Todd. Elliot says congratulations and asks if there are any plans to publish a description of your program as a model for other universities.
Yeah, that's a good question, Elliot. And yes, that will be the one publication I will follow up on. I got to find the right journal for it. I'll be talking to Michigan Wildflower Society that's March. I saw one person from Cleveland State here. I saw a couple people from MSU. They want to figure out how to get this to them as well, and maybe that's how we do this, is we get a couple collaborations going, different installations at different institutions. That way we're not just running the University of Toledo anecdote. It's a real process, and we begin to understand it better.
Great. And Lynn and Dawn, this should be quick, wants to know, will you be doing any installations at the UT Foundation?
I wish.
Okay, I believe that was all of our questions. I'm really sorry if I missed yours. If you still have a question, I guess you can contact us and we'll see if we can find it out for you. And I really did want to thank Todd for his great program. We were really excited to have you, and I might be trying to convince you to do a TNA field trip to explore UT Gardens this summer.
Totally.
And I also want to thank everyone for attending. We had really great attendance, and it was really exciting to see lots of people here and people I don't always see. And as a reminder, if anyone is interested, our February program is February the 17th at 7 p.m. And I thought I'd copied and pasted what it was into my note, but it's something to do with sandhill cranes, so it should be fun. So yeah, I prepared, I swear. And yeah, that should be all for our meeting. And thank you, Todd, so much for your time. And thanks again, everyone, for coming. And I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.